The girl in the folding chair whispered to the ceiling that she was running out of time, and the man on the other side of the wall felt something in his chest tighten that had not moved in 300 years. Petra Blackwood caught herself. Not Blackwood. Petra Brennan. She had to stop using fake names in her head when she filled out paperwork. The nurse had already left the donation room, and the needle was still in her arm, and the bag hanging from the steel rack was filling too slowly. Everything about her was too slow now. Her heartbeat, her healing, the way she woke up every morning surprised she had woken up at all. The clinic was buried 2 levels beneath County General Hospital, accessible only by a service elevator that required a keycard. Petra had been coming here for 8 months, ever since her hematologist had mentioned a trial program that paid better than the plasma centers. $200 every 2 weeks. Enough to cover the co-pays for the medication that was no longer working. She tilted her head back and stared at the fluorescent panel overhead. Her reflection ghosted in the black glass of the observation mirror that took up most of the far wall. Pale skin, dark hollows under her eyes, 23 years old, and she looked like a Victorian ghost. "The transfusion stopped working," she said to the empty room, barely louder than a breath. "I think I'm dying slowly." On the other side of the glass, Casimir Vaelor went absolutely still. He had been reviewing intake forms with the night coordinator, half listening to the rhythm of heartbeats in the dozen donation rooms that lined the corridor. Vampire-run blood banks were a necessity, carefully hidden within human infrastructure, and this one was his. He owned the building above it, funded the research wings, and ensured that every pint donated here was tested, cataloged, and distributed to the 11 vampire houses that called this city home. He did not usually listen to the donors, but her voice had cut through the wall like a knife, and now he could not unhear it. Casimir dismissed the coordinator with a flick of his fingers and moved closer to the mirror. The girl was perhaps 23, maybe younger. Dark hair pulled into a careless knot, oversized sweater drowning her frame, jeans that had been loose once and now hung like curtains. Her medical file was still on the tablet in his hand. Petra Brennan, type O negative. Perfect iron levels 3 months ago, declining steadily since. He scrolled further. She had flagged a pre-existing condition on her intake form, but left it unnamed. Privacy laws meant the clinic could not compel disclosure as long as her blood tested clean. Casimir set the tablet down and watched her through the glass. She had closed her eyes. Her lips were moving, maybe counting, maybe praying. The needle in her arm was taped down with clinical precision, but her hand was clenched on the armrest, knuckles white. She thought she was alone. She thought no one had heard. Casimir felt the weight of centuries settle on his shoulders, the old instinct rising. A king did not ignore suffering in his domain, not when it was laid bare like this, raw and unguarded. He left the observation room and walked down the corridor to the donation bay. The door was labeled Room 7. He knocked once, lightly, and stepped inside before she could answer. Petra's eyes flew open. "Sorry," Casimir said smoothly, offering his most disarming expression. "I didn't mean to startle you. I'm with the clinic administration, just doing a check-in." She blinked at him. Her gaze traveled from his face to his clothes-tailored black suit, pale gray shirt, no tie, and then back to his face. He knew what she was seeing. White blonde hair, almost silver in the fluorescent light, skin so pale it looked like porcelain, ice blue eyes that caught the light strangely. "You look like a vampire," she said. Casimir went very still. Then he laughed, low and genuine, because the irony was too perfect. "I get that a lot. Blame Scandinavian genetics and a graveyard shift schedule." She did not look convinced, but she did not press. Her attention dropped back to the needle in her arm. "Is something wrong with my donation?" "No, everything's fine." He pulled a rolling stool closer and sat, which put him just below her eye level. Deliberately non-threatening. "I couldn't help overhearing. You said the transfusion stopped working." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't realize anyone was listening." "The walls are thin," he lied. "Are you ill?" "That's private." "It is," he agreed. But if you're donating blood while managing a condition that's worsening, I need to know. For your safety. Petra looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and there was something fierce in them, despite the exhaustion written into every line of her face. It's called aplastic anemia, she said finally. My bone marrow doesn't make enough blood cells. I've been getting transfusions every 3 weeks for a year, but my counts keep dropping. The doctors say I need a marrow transplant, but I'm not high enough on the list, and I don't have family to test as donors. Casimir absorbed this. Aplastic anemia. Rare. Fatal if untreated. Transplants were the only real cure, and the waiting lists were long. Then why are you here? He asked quietly. Donating blood when you can't afford to lose it. She gave him a bitter little twist of her mouth that was not quite a smile. Because they pay $200, and I need to keep my insurance active to stay on the transplant list. Catch 22. I donate blood to afford the medication that's supposed to keep me alive long enough to maybe get the transplant that might save me. The matter-of-fact delivery made it worse. She had already accepted it, already made peace with the treadmill that was grinding her down. Casimir felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. What's your name? He asked. Petra. Petra, he repeated, tasting the syllables. I'm Casimir. That's very vampire, she said. He tilted his head. Is it? Old world, European, the kind of name you'd give a character in a Gothic novel. She was watching him again, and there was a flicker of curiosity breaking through the exhaustion. Do you actually work here, or are you just very committed to the aesthetic? I own the building, Casimir said, which was true enough, and I take a personal interest in our donors. Do you visit everyone, or am I special? There was a challenge in her voice, faint but unmistakable. She was too tired to be afraid, and that made her bold. Casimir liked that. You're special, he said, and watched color rise in her pale cheeks. The machine beside her beeped. The collection bag was full. Petra reached for the call button, but Casimir was already on his feet. I'll get the nurse, he said. He left before she could argue, stepping back into the corridor and closing the door behind him. He did not go to find the nurse. Instead, he stood in the hallway and pulled out his phone, dialing a number he had not used in months. The voice that answered was crisp and professional. Vaelor residence. Lucian, Casimir said. I need a full medical workup on a human. Petra Brennan. She's in the system as a donor. I want to know everything: diagnosis, prognosis, treatment history, transplant eligibility. And I want it tonight. There was a pause. Lucian had been Casimir's right hand for 70 years, and he knew better than to ask questions when his king used that tone. Understood, Lucian said. Anything else? Casimir glanced back at the closed door of room 7. Find out if there are any compatible marrow donors in the registry. Living or dead? Living or dead, Lucian repeated carefully. You heard me. My lord, if you're considering... I'm not considering anything yet, Casimir said. Just get me the information. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The nurse appeared at the end of the hall, and he nodded toward room 7. She disappeared inside, and a moment later, Petra emerged, a cotton ball taped to the inside of her elbow. She looked steadier on her feet than he had expected, stubborn vitality, clinging hard. Thank you for the donation, Casimir said as she approached, and for the conversation. Petra stopped in front of him. She was shorter than he had realized, the top of her head barely level with his shoulder. She had to tilt her chin up to meet his eyes. Why do I feel like you're going to do something weird? She asked. Casimir let himself give her a slow, easy grin. Because you're perceptive. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. She shook her head, but there was the faintest hint of a smile tugging at her lips now. I'm going to regret giving you my name, aren't I? Probably, Casimir said. But you'll be alive to regret it, so I'd call that a win. Her smile faded. For a moment, she just looked at him, and he wondered what she saw. A stranger in an expensive suit making promises he had no right to make. or something else. Something that flickered in the space between heartbeat and breath, where hope lived even when logic said it should not. "Good night, Casimir," she said finally. "Good night, Petra." He watched her walk to the elevator and disappear behind the steel doors. Then he returned to the observation room and pulled up her file again. Aplastic anemia, severe, refractory to immunosuppressive therapy, transfusion dependent. Estimated prognosis without transplant, 6 months to 1 year. 6 months. Casimir closed the file and looked at his reflection in the dark glass. White hair, white skin, eyes like winter ice. He had been a king for 200 years, a vampire for 300. He had survived wars, plagues, betrayals, and the slow erosion of his humanity. He had never saved anyone. But he had also never heard someone whisper that they were dying slowly and felt his dead heart crack open in response. He picked up the phone again. This time, he called someone older. The woman who answered did not bother with a greeting. "Casimir, it's been decades. What do you want?" "Viviane," Casimir said. "I need to know if the old blood rites still work." Silence. Then, very carefully, "Which rite?" "The king's tithe, the one where we give vitae to sustain a mortal life." Another pause, longer this time. When Viviane spoke again, her voice had gone flat. "That rite hasn't been performed in 2 centuries. The last king who tried it was executed by his own council. It's forbidden, Casimir. You know that." "I know the law," Casimir said. "I'm asking if the magic still works." "Why?" "Because I met someone who's dying, and I'm going to stop it." Viviane exhaled, a soft hiss of breath. "You're insane." "Probably. The rite requires a bond, a true bond, freely given. It's not a transfusion, Casimir. It's an oath written in blood. If you start it, and she dies anyway, it will hollow you out. You'll lose more than vitae. You'll lose yourself. I know. And the council will kill you for it. Let them try." There was a long silence. Then Viviane said very quietly, "What's her name?" "Petra." "Does she know what you are?" "Not yet." "Then you're going to have to tell her. The rite won't work if she doesn't consent, and she can't consent if she doesn't know what you're offering." Casimir leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. "I know. You're really going to do this?" "Yes." Viviane sighed. "Then you'd better come see me. If you're going to break every law we have, you might as well do it correctly." Casimir ended the call and sat in the dark observation room for a long time, listening to the distant hum of the clinic around him. Heartbeats, breath, life, flowing through tubing and into sterile bags, measured and catalogued and distributed. He thought about Petra's voice, soft and resigned, telling the empty air that she was dying. He thought about the way she had looked at him, wary and curious and stubborn. He thought about 6 months and what 6 months meant when you had lived for 300 years. It meant nothing. It meant everything. Casimir stood and walked out of the clinic, into the underground parking garage where his car waited. He drove through the city as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, and he did not think about the laws he was about to break. He thought about Petra. And he thought about the way her heartbeat had sounded through the wall, steady and strong despite everything, refusing to give up. He could work with that. Petra woke up to a text from an unknown number. "This is Casimir from the clinic. I have a proposition for you. Meet me tonight at 8, address below." "I promise it's not illegal." She stared at the screen for a full minute, then typed back, "How did you get my number?" The reply came immediately. "I own the clinic. I have everyone's number. Will you come?" Petra sat up in bed, her head swimming. The room tilted, then righted itself. She had slept for 12 hours and still felt like she had been hit by a truck. What kind of proposition? The kind that might save your life. She should have deleted the message, blocked the number, called the hospital, and reported a creepy administrator who was overstepping every professional boundary. Instead, she texted back, "Fine. But if you're a serial killer, I'm going to be really annoyed. Noted. The address he sent was on the north side of the city, in a neighborhood Petra had only seen from the highway. Old money, historic buildings, trees that had been planted a century ago and now formed canopies over streets lined with wrought iron fences. She took the bus because she had sold her car 6 months ago to pay for medication. The ride took 90 minutes. By the time she got off at the right stop, the sun had set, and the streetlights were casting pools of gold onto the sidewalk. The address led her to a mansion, not a house, not even an estate. A mansion. 3 stories of white stone and tall windows, set back from the street behind a gate that opened as she approached. No intercom, no keypad. It just swung inward, smooth and silent, as if it had been watching her. Petra walked up the long driveway, her sneakers crunching on gravel, and tried not to feel like she had stepped into a Gothic novel. The front door opened before she could knock. Casimir stood in the doorway, dressed more casually than he had been at the clinic. Dark jeans, a black sweater that made his pale hair look even more unreal. He was holding a glass of red wine, and he was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "You came," he said. "I'm an idiot," Petra replied. He stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Probably. But you're here, so let's make it count." The interior of the mansion was exactly what she had expected, and somehow worse. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, antique furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, a chandelier overhead that dripped crystal and cast fractured light across the floor. "Do you live here alone?" Petra asked, because the silence was too heavy. "Mostly," Casimir said. "I have staff, but I gave them the night off." "That's not ominous at all." He turned to look at her, and there was amusement in his eyes. "You're very flippant for someone who thinks I might be a serial killer." "It's a coping mechanism," Petra said. "I've been dying for a year. You stop being afraid of things when the worst thing is already happening." The amusement faded. Casimir set his wine glass down on a side table and crossed the room to stand in front of her. "That's why I asked you here," he said quietly. "I want to help you. You don't even know me. I know enough." Petra shook her head. "Look, I appreciate the concern, but unless you have a secret bone marrow match hidden in your basement, there's nothing you can do. I'm on the transplant list. I'm doing everything I can. It's just a waiting game now. What if I told you there was another option? I'd say you're about to pitch me some alternative medicine nonsense, and I'm going to leave." Casimir smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Not medicine. Magic." Petra stared at him. "Excuse me?" "Magic," he repeated. "Or if you prefer, something older than medicine. Something that exists outside the systems you've been relying on." She took a step back. "Okay, I'm leaving." "Petra, wait." "No," she said, her voice rising. "I came here because I thought you might actually be able to help. I don't know, maybe you knew a donor or had connections to move me up the list. But if you're going to stand here and tell me you can magic away a blood disease, then you're either delusional or cruel, and I don't have time for either." She turned toward the door. "I'm a vampire," Casimir said. Petra stopped. She did not turn around. She stood with her hand on the doorknob, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "That's not funny," she said. "It's not a joke." She turned slowly. Casimir was still standing in the center of the room, his hands loose at his sides, his expression calm. "Vampires aren't real," Petra said. "They are. Prove it." He moved. One moment he was 10 feet away, the next he was standing directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating off his skin. She had not seen him cross the space. He had simply been there, and then here, and her brain could not process the gap. Petra's breath caught. Casimir opened his mouth and she saw the fangs. Not costume teeth, not prosthetics. Real fangs, sharp and white, extending from his upper jaw. "I'm 300 years old," he said quietly. "I've been the vampire king of this city for 2 centuries. The clinic you donate at is mine. The blood we collect goes to feed the 11 vampire houses under my rule. And the reason I asked you here is because I can give you something no doctor can." Petra's knees felt weak. She leaned back against the door, her hand still on the knob. "This isn't real," she whispered. "It is. You're going to kill me." No. His voice was fierce. I'm going to save you. She looked up at him, at the impossible paleness of his skin, the unnatural stillness of his posture. He was not breathing. She realized that suddenly. His chest was not moving. How? She asked. Casimir stepped back, giving her space. There's an ancient right, a blood bond. If a vampire king gives his vitae to a mortal, freely and with intent, it can sustain their life, slow the progression of disease, buy time. How much time? I don't know, months, maybe longer. And what does it cost you? His jaw tightened. It drains me. Vitae is life force. The more I give, the weaker I become. So you'd be dying instead of me. I'd be weakened, not dying, I'm immortal. But you'd be vulnerable. Yes. Petra shook her head. Why would you do that? You don't know me. I know enough, he said again. That's not an answer. Casimir was silent for a moment. Then he said very quietly, I heard you whisper that you were dying, and I couldn't walk away. I've lived for 300 years, Petra. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched thousands of people live and die, and I've never once tried to stop it. But you... He stopped. You said it so softly, like you were apologizing for taking up space. And I thought, no, not her, not like this. Petra felt something crack open in her chest. You don't even know me, she said again, but her voice was shaking now. Then let me, Casimir said. She stared at him. At this impossible, beautiful, terrifying man who claimed to be a monster and was offering her the one thing she had stopped hoping for. A chance. If I say yes, Petra said slowly, what happens? I perform the rite. You drink my blood. The bond forms. Your body stabilizes. We buy time to find you a real transplant. And if it doesn't work, then I keep trying. Until it kills you. It won't kill me. But it could weaken you enough that someone else does. Casimir tilted his head. You're very concerned about my well-being for someone who just found out I'm a vampire. I'm concerned about making a deal that gets someone killed, even if that someone is technically already dead. He laughed, short and surprised. I like you. You don't know me, Petra said, but this time it sounded less like an argument and more like a question. I'd like to, Casimir said. She looked at him for a long time. Then she stepped away from the door and walked into the center of the room. Okay, she said. Tell me how this works. The rite required 3 things: blood, intent, and consent. Casimir explained it while Petra sat on the antique sofa and tried to process the fact that she was having a conversation about blood magic with a vampire king. The blood is the medium, he said. It carries vitae, which is life force. When you drink it, the bond forms. But it only works if both parties consent. You have to choose this, Petra. Freely, no coercion. And the intent? She asked. I have to mean it. I have to want you to live. Do you? He looked at her, and his eyes were very blue in the lamplight. Yes. Petra swallowed. Okay. What do I have to do? Drink, he said simply. He picked up a knife from the side table, silver, ornate, clearly ceremonial, and drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and thick, and he held his hand out over a crystal glass. The blood dripped into it, filling the glass halfway. Petra stared at it. That's a lot of blood. Vitae is concentrated. You only need a little. That's not a little. It won't hurt you. She reached for the glass. Her hand was shaking. Casimir's blood was still warm, and it gleamed like rubies in the light. If I do this, Petra said, what happens to us? What do you mean? The bond. Does it tie us together? Will I feel what you feel? Will you control me? No, Casimir said firmly. The bond is one way. I'll be able to sense when you're in distress, but that's all. You'll still be yourself. Your choices are still yours. And when it's over, when I get the transplant and I don't need this anymore, then the bond fades. You go back to your life. Petra looked down at the glass. What if I don't want it to fade? Casimir went very still. She looked up at him. "You're offering me time. But time with what? Time to wait alone in my apartment for a transplant that might never come? Or time with you?" "Petra, I'm not saying I'm in love with you," she said quickly. "I don't even know you. But I'm dying, Casimir. I've been dying for a year, and you're the first person who's looked at me and seen something worth saving. So if I'm going to do this, I need to know what I'm getting into. All of it." Casimir sat down beside her, close enough that their knees almost touched. "If you drink my blood, the bond will sustain you, but it will also change you. You'll be stronger, faster. Your senses will sharpen. You'll heal more quickly. Not vampire fast, but faster than human. Side effects? You'll need to avoid sunlight, not because it will kill you, but because it will hurt. The vitae makes you sensitive. Anything else? You'll crave blood." Petra blinked. "Excuse me?" "Not human blood. Mine. The bond creates a need. You'll want to drink from me again." "How often?" "Once a month, maybe less. It depends on how quickly your body burns through the vitae." She absorbed this, "So I'd have to see you regularly." "Yes?" "For months." "Yes." "And you're okay with that?" Casimir looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. "Petra, I would give you every drop of blood in my body if it meant you'd live." She sucked in a breath. "You don't know me," she said again, but this time it was barely a whisper. "Then let me," he said. "Let me know you. Let me have the time to know you, and if at the end of it you want nothing to do with me, I'll accept that. But please, let me try." Petra looked down at the glass in her hands. The blood had cooled slightly, but it still shimmered. She thought about the hospital, the waiting room, the endless cycle of tests and transfusions and medications that stopped working. She thought about her apartment, small and cold, and the way she had started sleeping with the lights on because she was afraid of waking up dead in the dark. She thought about Casimir's voice, steady and sure, telling her he would not let her die. She lifted the glass to her lips and drank. The blood was thick and metallic, and it burned going down. She gagged, but forced herself to swallow. Once, twice. The glass was empty. Casimir was watching her intently. "How do you feel?" "Like I just drank blood," Petra said, her voice hoarse. And then the world exploded. Heat flooded her body, starting in her chest and radiating outward. Her heartbeat spiked, loud and fast, and she could feel it everywhere in her fingertips, her throat, her temples. The room seemed to brighten, the colors sharpening, the shadows deepening. She could hear things she had not heard before: the hum of electricity in the walls, the distant sound of traffic, Casimir's voice saying her name. "Petra! Petra, look at me!" She turned her head. He was so close. She could see every detail of his face, the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the exact shade of his irises, the way his pupils dilated when he looked at her. "It's working," she whispered. "Yes. I can feel it. I know." She reached out and touched his face, her fingers trembling. His skin was cold, but it did not feel wrong. It felt solid, real. "You're really a vampire," she said. "Yes, and you just saved my life. For now," he said quietly. "But we'll keep you alive, Petra, I promise." She believed him. The first week after the rite, Petra felt better than she had in a year. Her energy came back. The constant fatigue that had weighed her down lifted, and she could make it through a full day without needing to lie down. Her bruises faded. Her headaches stopped. She went to her scheduled transfusion appointment, and her counts had stabilized. The doctors were baffled. Petra did not tell them about Casimir. She saw him every other day. He insisted on it, saying he needed to monitor the bond. But Petra suspected it was more than that. He wanted to see her, and she wanted to see him. They met at the mansion, usually in the evenings. He cooked for her, or tried to. 300 years old, and he had never quite mastered the art of human food. "This pasta is crunchy," Petra said, poking at her plate. I may have underestimated the boiling time, Casimir admitted. You didn't boil it at all, did you? I got distracted. She looked up at him. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching her with an expression that was half sheepish, half amused. You're a terrible cook, she said. I haven't eaten food in 300 years. I'm out of practice. Then why are you trying? Because you need to eat, and I want to take care of you. Something warm unfurled in Petra's chest. She set down her fork and stood, crossing the kitchen to stand in front of him. You don't have to cook for me, she said quietly. I want to. Why? He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were cool against her skin. Because you're here, because you're alive, because I like the way you tease me about crunchy pasta. Petra felt her breath catch. Casimir. I know, he said. It's too soon. I'm moving too fast. But I've lived a long time, Petra, and I've never felt like this. I don't want to waste the time we have. She looked up at him, at the impossible beauty of his face, the quiet intensity in his eyes. What do you feel? Like I've been waiting for you, he said simply. Petra's heart clenched. That's a line from a movie. It's also the truth. She reached up and touched his face, her palm against his cheek. He leaned into the touch, his eyes closing. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to fall for someone when I'm still trying not to die. Then don't think about dying, Casimir said. Think about living. Think about right now. Think about the fact that you're here, and I'm here, and we have time. Do we? He opened his eyes. Yes. She believed him. She kissed him. It was not planned. She just leaned up and pressed her lips to his, and he went very still. For a moment, she thought she had made a mistake. Then he kissed her back. His hands came up to frame her face, and he kissed her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Slow and deep and devastating. She could feel the coolness of his skin, the careful control in the way he held her, as if he was afraid she might break. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless, or at least she was. Casimir was staring at her with an expression that looked almost awed. Petra, he said. Don't, she said. Don't tell me that was a mistake. Don't tell me we can't do this. I wasn't going to. Then what? He rested his forehead against hers. I was going to say that I'm in trouble, because I'm falling for you, and I don't know how to stop. She felt tears prick her eyes. Good, because I'm falling too. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, and Petra thought that maybe, just maybe, she had found something worth living for. But the blood laws did not care about love. Casimir's court was made up of 11 vampire houses, each led by an elder. They met once a month in the old council chamber beneath the city, a cavernous space carved out of stone and lit by torches that never went out. Casimir had been avoiding the meetings. He could not avoid this one. Lucien met him at the entrance, his expression grim. They know. Casimir did not ask how. Vampire politics were built on secrets and surveillance. Of course they knew. How bad? He asked. Lord Davorin is calling for your abdication. Casimir's jaw tightened. Davorin was the eldest of the council, nearly 500 years old, and he had never forgiven Casimir for being chosen as king over him. Let him call, Casimir said. I'm not stepping down. My lord, you're weakened. They can see it. Every house leader in that room can smell the vitae you've been spending. Then they know I'm committed. Lucien grabbed his arm. Casimir, they will kill you if you don't stop. They can try. He walked into the council chamber. 11 pairs of eyes turned to him. 11 vampires, ancient and powerful, seated around a circular stone table. The torches cast flickering shadows across their faces, making them look even more inhuman than usual. Davorin stood. He was tall and skeletal, with skin like parchment and eyes like black pits. King Vaelor, he said, his voice dripping with mockery, how gracious of you to join us. I'm here, Casimir said flatly. What do you want? To discuss your recent indiscretion. Casimir did not rise to the bait. He walked to his seat at the head of the table and sat, leaning back in the chair with an air of casual arrogance. Be specific, Davarin. You performed the king's tithe, Davarin said. You bonded yourself to a dying human. You have spent your vitae, our vitae, the strength of this court on a mortal who will die regardless. She's not dying, Casimir said. Not yet, but she will. Aplastic anemia is fatal. A transplant might save her, but the odds are slim. And in the meantime, you are wasting your power on a futile gesture. It's my power to spend. It is the court's power, another elder said. Lady Seraphine, cold and elegant. You are king, Casimir, but you rule by our consent, and we do not consent to this. Casimir looked around the table. Most of the elders were watching him with expressions ranging from disapproval to outright hostility. Only two, Lucien and Lady Vivienne, looked conflicted. I'm not asking for your consent, Casimir said quietly. The room went silent. You forget yourself, Davarin said, his voice dangerous. No, Casimir said. I remember exactly who I am. I'm the king. I've held this city together for 200 years. I've kept the peace, maintained the blood supply, and protected us from exposure. And I will continue to do so. But I will not stand here and justify saving a life to a council that has forgotten what it means to care about anything other than power. This is not about power, Seraphine said coldly. This is about survival. You are weakening yourself for a human. What happens when the hunters come? When the humans discover us, you will be too weak to protect us. I'm strong enough. Prove it, Davarin said. Casimir stood. What do you want, Davarin? A challenge, you and me. If you win, we accept your decision. If I win, you end the bond and step down. Casimir stared at him. A challenge was a formal duel, governed by ancient rules. It was the only way to settle a dispute between king and elder. It was also a death sentence. Casimir was weakened. Davarin was not. No, Vivienne said sharply. A challenge is too extreme. Is it? Davarin turned to her. Our king is gambling with all our lives. I think a challenge is perfectly reasonable. Casimir looked at Lucien, who was pale and tense. Then he looked back at Davarin. Fine, he said. Tomorrow night, the old cathedral. I'll see you there. He walked out of the council chamber before anyone could argue. Lucien caught up with him in the corridor. You can't fight him. You'll lose. I know. Then why did you agree? Casimir stopped and turned to face his oldest friend. Because if I don't, they'll force me to end the bond. And I won't do that, Lucien. I won't let her die. So you'll die instead? I'll figure something out. Lucien grabbed his shoulders. Casimir, please, think about this. Casimir looked at him, and his voice was steady. I am thinking. I'm thinking about Petra. I'm thinking about the fact that for the first time in 300 years, I care about something other than duty, and I'm not giving that up. Lucien stared at him. Then he let go and stepped back. Then you'd better win. Petra found out about the challenge from Vivienne. The older vampire appeared at her apartment door just after midnight, pale and regal in a long coat. You're Petra, Vivienne said. And you're a vampire, Petra replied. Vivienne, I'm a friend of Casimir's. May I come in? Petra hesitated, then stepped aside. Vivienne swept into the small apartment, her gaze taking in the cramped space with clinical detachment. He's going to fight Davarin tomorrow night, Vivienne said without preamble, and he's going to lose. Petra's heart lurched. What? The council has called a challenge. Davarin wants him dead, and Casimir agreed to the duel. He's weakened from the bond. He won't survive. Then he needs to end the bond, Petra said immediately. Vivienne looked at her sharply. He won't. I'll make him. He won't listen. He's decided you're worth dying for. Petra sank onto the couch, her hands shaking. This is my fault. No, Vivienne said. This is politics. Davarin has wanted Casimir's throne for decades. You're just the excuse. Then what do I do? Vivienne sat down beside her. You have two choices. You let Casimir fight and hope he wins, or you offer yourself as collateral. What does that mean? You agree to be turned, Become a vampire. If you're no longer dying, the bond becomes irrelevant. Casimir gets his strength back, and the council has no grounds to challenge him. Petra stared at her. Turned. You mean killed and brought back? Yes. And if I say no? Then Casimir fights and dies. Petra felt something cold settle in her chest. He told me I had a choice, that I could go back to my life when this was over. You do have a choice, Vivian said. But so does he. And he's chosen you. Petra closed her eyes. She thought about Casimir in the kitchen, trying to cook pasta. She thought about the way he looked at her, like she was something precious. She thought about the kiss, and the way he had whispered that he was falling for her. She thought about 6 months, and what 6 months meant. If I'm turned, she said slowly, what happens to me? You die, your heart stops, and then you wake up. As a vampire, yes. And I'd live forever, yes. With him. Vivian nodded. If that's what you want. Petra opened her eyes. What if it's not? Then you walk away, but you do it now, before he dies for you. Petra stood and walked to the window. The city stretched out below, lights glittering in the dark. She had lived here her whole life, 23 years. It felt like nothing. I want to talk to him, she said. There's no time. Then make time. Vivian studied her for a long moment. Then she stood. I'll bring him to you. But Petra, whatever you decide, decide quickly. The challenge is tomorrow night. Casimir arrived an hour later, and he looked furious. Vivian told you, he said as soon as he stepped inside. Yes. I was going to handle it. By dying? He flinched. I'm not going to die. You're weakened. Vivian said you can't win. Vivian worries too much. Petra crossed the room and grabbed his hands. They were cold, always cold, but solid. Real. Casimir, she said quietly, tell me the truth. Can you win? He looked at her, and she saw the answer in his eyes. No, he said finally, not as I am now. Then end the bond. No. Casimir. No, he said again, more forcefully. I won't do it, Petra. I won't let you die, and I won't let you die for me. Then what do you want me to do? His voice cracked. Walk away? Pretend I never met you? Go back to being the cold, unfeeling king who doesn't care about anyone? I want you to live, Petra said, and she was crying now. I want you to be okay. I'm only okay when you're alive, he said. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. Don't you understand? You're not a burden, Petra. You're the first thing in 300 years that's made me feel human. She leaned into his touch. Vivian said I could be turned. Casimir went very still. No. It would solve everything. No. Casimir. I won't do that to you, he said fiercely. Turning is not a gift. It's a curse. You lose the sun. You lose food. You lose the ability to grow old, to die naturally, to have a human life. I won't take that from you. You're not taking it. I'm offering. You're offering because you think you have to. I'm offering because I want to, Petra said. She took his hands and held them tight. Casimir, I've been dying for a year. I've made peace with it. But then you showed up and gave me a reason to live. And now I have a choice. I can go back to dying slowly, or I can stay with you, forever. Petra, I love you, she said. He sucked in a breath. I know it's fast, she continued. I know it's insane, but I'm dying, Casimir. I don't have time to take it slow, and I don't want to waste the time I have pretending I don't feel this. He stared at her, and his eyes were bright. You don't know what you're saying. I do. You're human. You deserve a human life. I deserve a life I choose, Petra said, and I'm choosing you. Casimir closed his eyes. If I turn you, there's no going back. I know. You'll be tied to me. Forever. I know. And if you regret it, I won't. He opened his eyes, and there were tears on his cheeks. Petra, I have lived for 300 years, and I have never loved anyone the way I love you. Her breath caught. Then turn me. Save yourself. And let me stay with you. He kissed her, hard and desperate and full of everything he could not say. When they finally pulled apart, he was shaking. Tomorrow night, he said, after the challenge. If I survive, you'll survive, Petra said, because I'm going to make sure of it. The turning happened before the challenge, Casimir argued. He tried to convince her to wait, to see if he could win first, but Petra was stubborn and Viviane backed her up. If she's turned before the duel, the bond is nullified, Viviane said. You'll be at full strength. You'll win. And if the turning kills her? Casimir demanded. It won't, Viviane said. She's young, strong. The vitae has already changed her. The turning will be easier than most. Casimir looked at Petra. Are you sure? Yes. Once this starts, I can't stop it. I know. He took her hands. Petra, I need you to understand. You're going to die. Your heart will stop. You'll feel it. And then you'll wake up and you'll be hungry. Desperately hungry. And the only thing that will satisfy it is blood. Your blood, Petra said. Yes. Then I'll have you. He closed his eyes. I love you. I love you too. The turning itself was both more and less than she expected. They went to the mansion. Casimir had prepared a room, soft lighting, thick curtains, a bed that looked like it belonged in a museum. Viviane waited outside, standing guard. Casimir sat beside Petra on the bed. It will hurt, he said quietly. I'm going to drain you almost completely, and then I'll give you my blood. Your body will die, and then it will wake up. How long does it take? A few hours. She nodded. Okay. He leaned in and kissed her, soft and lingering. I'll be here the entire time. I know. He tilted her head to the side, exposing her throat. She felt his breath against her skin, cool and steady. I love you, he whispered, and then he bit. The pain was immediate and sharp, but it faded quickly into something else, something warm and heavy, like sinking into deep water. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, the blood leaving her body in steady pulls. Casimir's arm was around her, holding her steady, and she leaned into him. She was not afraid. Her vision started to blur. The room dimmed. Her heartbeat stuttered, once, twice, and then stopped. Petra felt herself falling, and then Casimir's voice, urgent and close. Drink. Something pressed against her lips. Blood, warm and thick. She swallowed reflexively, and the blood flooded her mouth. She drank, and drank, and drank, until the world came rushing back. Her heart beat once, twice, and then it stopped again. But this time, she did not fall. She opened her eyes. Casimir was leaning over her, his face pale and strained. Petra. She sat up. The room was impossibly bright, every detail sharp and clear. She could hear everything, the hum of the house, the distant sound of traffic, Viviane's heartbeat in the next room. I'm alive, she said. Casimir let out a shaky breath. Yes. She looked down at her hands. They were pale now, almost as pale as his. She could feel the vitae thrumming through her veins, hot and electric. I'm a vampire, she said. Yes. She looked up at him. And you're at full strength. He nodded. The bond is gone. You're no longer dying. So you'll win the challenge. Yes. She reached for him, pulling him close. Then let's go end this. The duel took place in the old cathedral on the edge of the city, a crumbling stone building that had been abandoned for decades. The entire court was there, arranged in a circle around the nave. Casimir walked in with Petra at his side. The reaction was immediate. Every vampire in the room turned to stare. Davrin's eyes widened. Seraphine let out a sharp hiss. What is this? Davrin demanded. This, Casimir said calmly, is my mate, Petra Vaelor. The name landed like a bomb. You turned her, Seraphine said, her voice icy. I did. You broke the law. No, Viviane said, stepping forward. The law forbids a king from spending his vitae on a dying mortal. Petra is no longer dying. The law has been satisfied. Daverin's face twisted. "This is a trick. This is a solution," Casimir said. He looked around the circle, his gaze hard. "I have upheld every law of this court. I have protected you, led you, and bled for you, and I will continue to do so, but I will not apologize for saving the woman I love." "And the challenge?" Davorin asked. "Still stands," Casimir said. "If you want my throne, come and take it." Davorin moved. He was fast, faster than Petra had expected. He crossed the nave in a blur, claws extended, aimed straight for Casimir's throat. Casimir met him head-on. The two vampires collided in a crash of force that shook the walls. Davorin was older, more experienced, but Casimir was stronger now, fueled by vitae and rage and love. They fought with brutal efficiency, claws and fangs. No words, just violence. Petra watched, her hands clenched, her new senses taking in every detail. She could see the strain in Casimir's movements, the way he was holding back just enough to avoid killing Davorin outright. He did not want to kill. He wanted to win. Davorin lunged again, and this time Casimir caught him by the throat. He slammed the older vampire into the stone floor, hard enough to crack the tiles. "Yield!" Casimir said. Davorin spat at him. Casimir's grip tightened. "Yield, or I'll end you!" For a long moment, the cathedral was silent. Then Davorin rasped, "I yield." Casimir let him go and stepped back. Davorin collapsed on the floor, gasping. Casimir turned to face the court. "Is there anyone else?" No one moved. "Good," Casimir said. He held out his hand to Petra. "Then this is over." Petra crossed the nave and took his hand. He pulled her close, and the court watched in stunned silence as their king kissed his new queen. The months that followed were a blur of adjustment and joy. Petra learned what it meant to be a vampire. The hunger, the strength, the way the world looked different through immortal eyes. Casimir taught her everything: how to hunt, how to control her instincts, how to navigate the politics of the court. She was good at it, better than he had expected. The court accepted her slowly. Some resented her, others were curious, but none of them challenged Casimir again. Petra moved into the mansion. It became home faster than she expected. She filled the empty rooms with books and music and laughter, and Casimir watched her with an expression that was equal parts wonder and adoration. They had time now, all the time in the world. One night, nearly a year after the turning, they stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. "Do you regret it?" Casimir asked quietly. Petra looked at him. "Regret what?" "This. Becoming a vampire. Giving up your human life." She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her. "I was dying, Casimir. You gave me a life. How could I regret that? You could have had a transplant. You could have lived as a human. Maybe," she said, "or maybe I would have died waiting. But I didn't. Because of you." He rested his chin on top of her head. "I love you." "I know," she said. "And I love you." They stood there as the last light faded from the sky, and Petra thought about the girl who had whispered that she was dying slowly. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who had been given a second chance and had taken it with both hands. Someone who had found love in the most impossible place. And as the stars began to appear overhead, Petra realized that she was not afraid anymore. Not of dying, not of living, not of the future. Because she had Casimir. And they had forever. Years passed. The city changed around them, but the mansion stayed the same. A constant, a home. Petra became a force in the court. She was not content to be just a queen in name. She took an active role in managing the blood banks, improving donor conditions, and negotiating with the human world to keep their existence hidden. Casimir watched her with pride. She was brilliant, fierce, compassionate in a way that reminded him why he had fallen for her in the first place. They traveled: Paris, Tokyo, London, cities where vampire courts had stood for centuries, and Petra charmed them all. She was curious about the world, hungry for experience, and Casimir gave her everything he could. But they always came back to the mansion. because that was where they had started. One evening, nearly 5 years after the turning, Petra found Casimir in the library. He was reading, or pretending to, a book open in his lap. "You're brooding," she said. He looked up. "I'm not brooding. You are. You have that look." "What look?" "The look that says you're thinking too much about the past." He set the book aside and held out his hand. She took it, letting him pull her into his lap. "I was thinking about the night I heard you whisper that you were dying," he said quietly. "That was a long time ago. 5 years. It feels like yesterday." Petra rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you wish things had been different?" "No," he said. "I just wish I had met you sooner. You had 300 years to find me. What took you so long?" He laughed, low and warm. "I was waiting for you to be born." She swatted his arm. "That's creepy, but true." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Petra said, "Do you ever think about the future?" "All the time." "What do you see?" He tightened his arms around her. "You, me, this house. 1,000 more years of you teasing me about my cooking and me teaching you terrible vampire history." "That sounds perfect," Petra said. "It does, doesn't it?" She looked up at him. "I love you, Casimir. I love you too," he said, and then softer. "Thank you. For what?" "For choosing me, for trusting me, for letting me save you." "You did save me," Petra said. "In every way that matters." He kissed her, slow and deep, and the library faded away. There was only the two of them, wrapped in each other, bound by blood and choice and love. And as the night stretched on, Petra thought about the poor girl who had whispered she was dying slowly, the vampire king who had vowed to trade his life for hers. She thought about how that vow had changed everything, and she thought about the future they had built together, one moment at a time. Forever was a long time. But with Casimir, it would never be long enough. The mansion had become something of a legend in vampire circles, a place where a dying girl had become a queen, where a king had defied his court and won. Other vampires came to visit, curious about the couple who had rewritten the rules. Petra greeted them all with warmth and grace, and Casimir stood beside her, proud and possessive. They were partners in every sense of the word. But the thing Petra loved most was the quiet moments, the evenings when it was just the two of them, sitting in the library or walking through the garden behind the mansion. Those were the moments when she felt most alive. One night, 10 years after the turning, they stood in the garden under a sky full of stars. The city lights glowed in the distance, but here, in their small corner of the world, it was peaceful. "Do you ever miss it?" Casimir asked. "Miss what?" "Being human, the sun, food, all the things you gave up." Petra thought about it. "Sometimes," she admitted, "I miss the sun. I miss the way food used to taste. But I don't regret it, Casimir. Not for a second." "Why not?" She turned to face him. "Because I have you, and that's worth more than anything I lost." He cupped her face in his hands. "I don't deserve you." "You saved me," Petra said. "You deserve everything." They kissed under the stars, and Petra felt the bond between them, not the blood-right bond, which had faded long ago, but something deeper, something that had grown over years of shared moments and quiet love. They were bound by choice now, and that was stronger than any magic. 20 years after the turning, the court threw a celebration. 2 decades of King Casimir and Queen Petra. 2 decades of peace and prosperity. The mansion was filled with vampires from across the country, all gathered to honor the couple who had changed everything. Petra stood on the balcony, watching the party unfold below. She was dressed in a deep blue gown that shimmered in the candlelight, her hair pinned up in an elegant twist. She looked regal, immortal, happy. Casimir joined her, 2 glasses of blood wine in his hands. He offered her one, and she took it. "To 20 years," he said. "To forever," Petra replied. They clinked glasses and drank. Below, the party continued. music and laughter and the low hum of conversation. But up here on the balcony, it was just the two of them. "Do you remember the night we met?" Petra asked. "Every detail," Casimir said. "I thought you were going to kill me. I thought you were going to run." "I should have. I'm glad you didn't." She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her waist. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," he said. "Always." They stood there for a long time, watching the stars and the party and the city beyond. And Petra thought about the girl who had whispered that she was dying slowly, the vampire king who had vowed to trade his life for hers. She thought about how that vow had become a promise kept, a love that had defied death and time and every law of vampire society. And as the night wore on, Petra realized that she had everything she had ever wanted: a life, a love, a future, forever, with Casimir. And that was more than enough. 30 years after the turning, they decided to take a trip, not to another city or another court, but to the place where it had all started. The clinic beneath County General Hospital was still there, still running. Casimir had long since handed over day-to-day operations to Lucian, but he still owned the building. They went late at night, when the donation rooms were empty. Petra walked through the corridors, her hand in Casimir's, and marveled at how small it all seemed now. "This is where I heard you," Casimir said, stopping outside room 7. Petra looked at the door. "This is where I thought I was going to die. And instead, you lived." She turned to him. "Because of you." He pulled her close. "Because of us." They stood there for a moment, in the place where their story had begun. Then Petra said, "Do you think we would have found each other if things had been different?" "Yes," Casimir said without hesitation. "In this life or another, I would have found you." "How can you be so sure?" "Because some things are inevitable," he said. "And you and me, we're inevitable." Petra felt tears prick her eyes, something that still happened, even after 30 years as a vampire. "I love you so much." "I love you too," he said. "More than you'll ever know." They left the clinic and drove back to the mansion as the sun began to rise. They watched it from behind the thick curtains of their bedroom, the light painting the world in gold. Petra had given up the sun when she became a vampire, but she had gained something far more precious, a love that would last forever. 50 years after the turning, the court held another celebration. Half a century of King Casimir and Queen Petra. Half a century of unprecedented peace. Petra stood in the council chamber, addressing the gathered vampires. She was confident now, commanding in a way that would have shocked the dying girl she had once been. 50 years ago, she said, her voice carrying through the stone hall, I was a human on the edge of death. I had given up hope. And then I met a man who refused to let me die. A man who broke every rule to save me. A man who taught me that love is stronger than death. She looked at Casimir, who stood beside her, his hand in hers. King Casimir gave me a second chance, she continued. And together, we have built something extraordinary. A court that values compassion as much as strength. A society that protects the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. A future worth living for. The vampires erupted into applause. Petra stepped back and Casimir took her place. 50 years, he said, his voice steady. And I would do it all again. Every challenge, every fight, every moment of doubt, because it led me to her. He turned to Petra. You are my heart, my queen, my everything, and I will spend the rest of eternity proving that you made the right choice when you chose me. Petra felt her throat tighten. Even after 50 years, he could still make her cry. The celebration continued late into the night, music and dancing and speeches from vampires who had once opposed them and now sang their praises. But eventually, the guests left, and it was just the two of them again. They stood in the garden, under the stars, and Petra thought about everything they had been through, the dying, the turning, the challenges, the love. Do you have any regrets? Casimir asked. Not one, Petra said. Not even the sun? She shook her head. I traded the sun for forever with you. That's not a trade I regret. He kissed her, slow and sweet. I love you, Petra Vaelor. I love you too, Casimir Vaelor. They stood there for a long time, holding each other, and Petra thought about the future. 100 more years, 1,000, an eternity. It was a long time, but it was not long enough, because she had Casimir, and with him every moment was precious, every night was a gift, every year was a blessing. A century after the turning, they decided to do something different. They opened the mansion to young vampires, newly turned, lost, struggling to adjust to their new existence. Petra had never forgotten what it felt like to wake up as a vampire, confused and hungry and afraid. She wanted to help others through that transition. Casimir supported her completely. The mansion became a sanctuary, a place where new vampires could learn to control their hunger, understand their powers, and find their place in the world. Petra taught them with patience and compassion. Casimir taught them with strength and wisdom. Together, they created something beautiful. One evening, a young vampire named Elise approached Petra. She had been turned only a month ago, and she was still struggling. "How do you do it?" Elise asked. "How do you make it look so easy?" Petra smiled. "It's not easy. It never has been. But I have something that makes it worthwhile." "What?" "Love," Petra said simply. "I have someone who makes every night worth living, and that makes all the difference." Elise looked at her, and there was hope in her eyes. "Do you think I'll find that?" "I do," Petra said. "It might take time, but it's out there. You just have to be open to it." Later that night, Petra told Casimir about the conversation. "You give them hope," he said. "You gave me hope," Petra replied. "I'm just passing it on." He pulled her close. "You're extraordinary, do you know that?" "I learned from the best." They kissed, and Petra felt the same spark she had felt 100 years ago. The same love, the same connection. Time had not dulled it. If anything, it had grown stronger. 150 years after the turning, they stood on the balcony and watched the city below. It had changed so much since the night they met. Taller buildings, brighter lights, more people. But some things stayed the same. The mansion, their love, the bond between them. "Do you ever think about how it started?" Petra asked. "All the time," Casimir said. "What do you think about?" "How close I came to losing you. How lucky I am that I didn't." Petra leaned against him. "I was the lucky one." "We both were." They stood in comfortable silence, and Petra thought about the poor girl who had whispered that she was dying slowly. The vampire king who had vowed to trade his life for hers. That vow had changed everything. It had given her life. It had given them love. It had given them forever. "Thank you," Petra said quietly. "For what?" "For hearing me that night, for refusing to let me die, for loving me." Casimir turned her to face him. "Petra, you saved me just as much as I saved you. Before you, I was just going through the motions, existing, not living. You taught me how to feel again, how to care, how to love." "We saved each other," Petra said. "Yes," he agreed. "We did." They kissed under the stars, and Petra felt the weight of a century and a half of love settle over her like a warm blanket. This was home, not the mansion, not the city, him. Casimir was her home, and she was his. 200 years after the turning, the court decided to honor them with a monument, a statue in the heart of the city, hidden in a park that only vampires knew about. It depicted Casimir and Petra, standing side by side, their hands clasped. The inscription at the base read, "For love that defied death." Petra stood in front of the statue, staring up at her own face rendered in marble. "This is weird," she said. Casimir laughed. "It's an honor. It's weird." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You're immortalized now, literally. So are you." "I've been immortalized for centuries. You're the one who's new to this." She turned in his arms to face him. "Do you think we'll still be together in another 200 years? "Yes." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I love you," he said simply. and that's never going to change. Petra felt her heart swell. I love you too. They stood there, in front of their monument, and Petra thought about the journey that had brought them here. The dying, the turning, the challenges, the love, 200 years, and they were just getting started. 300 years after the turning, they decided to renew their vows, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to. The ceremony was small, just their closest friends and allies. Vivienne officiated, her voice steady and warm. 300 years ago, Vivienne said, a dying girl whispered that she was running out of time, and a vampire king refused to accept it. He broke every law, defied his court, risked his life, all because he could not bear the thought of her death. She looked at Casimir. And in doing so, he found something he had been searching for his entire existence. Love. She turned to Petra. And you, Petra, you took a leap of faith. You chose love over fear, life over death, and in doing so, you became one of the greatest queens this court has ever known. Vivienne smiled. 300 years later, you stand here, still together, still in love, still defying the odds. Casimir and Petra faced each other, their hands clasped. I vow to love you, Casimir said, his voice thick with emotion. For as long as the stars shine, for as long as the world turns, for as long as I exist. I vow to love you, Petra echoed, in this life and every life after, in every moment, in every breath, forever. They kissed, and the small gathering erupted into applause, but Petra barely heard it. All she could hear was the sound of Casimir's voice, whispering in her ear. I love you. I love you too, she whispered back. And in that moment, Petra knew that they had made it. 300 years. And they would make it 300 more. Because some loves were inevitable. Some loves were eternal. And theirs was both. The years continued to pass, but Petra and Casimir remained constant. A fixed point in an ever-changing world. They watched empires rise and fall. Technology advanced, the world transformed around them, but their love stayed the same, strong, unwavering, eternal. They had everything they needed, each other, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. One night, 400 years after the turning, they stood in the garden again, the same spot where they had stood so many times before. Do you remember the night I asked you what you saw in the future? Petra asked. I said I saw you, me, and this house, Casimir replied, and 1,000 more years of me teasing you about your cooking. He laughed. I've gotten better. You've gotten marginally less terrible. He pulled her close. 400 years, and you're still teasing me. 400 years, and you still deserve it. They kissed, and Petra felt the same rush of love she had felt the very first time. It had not faded. It had not diminished. If anything, it had grown, deeper, richer, more complex. 400 years of shared moments, 400 years of laughter and tears and quiet nights, 400 years of love. And they had forever ahead of them. Petra looked up at the stars, and she thought about the girl who had whispered that she was dying slowly. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who had lived, who had loved, who had found something worth holding on to. Forever. Thank you, she said again. Casimir did not ask what for. He knew. He always knew. Thank you, he said back. And they stood there, under the stars, holding each other. Two immortals, two souls, one love, forever. The end.